This company has got three classes of shares. They have class A, B, and C. And the only difference between them is the voting rights. So when we take a look at Discovery Shares A, we can see what the return has been on the stock versus B. A has one voting right, and B has 10 voting rights. And then Class C has none. Okay, so let's just focus in on A and B. Like, what's the difference between them? You can see the performance year to date is 116% on the B, and it's only 44% on the A. So basically, it's the same company. It's the only difference is voting rights. So they should be the same price. So let's take a look at the stock. Is this one's gone straight up. It's up 80%. This one's unchanged. And Class C is actually down 1.65%. So the difference between these three stocks is that Class A has one share of voting rights. B is 10 and C is none. So it's interesting that those C's are down when those B's are up. Could there be some kind of takeover happening? There may or may not be. I'm not recommending that you rush in and buy this thing, but look at this stock move. Someone's caught short, and then the other question is, does somebody want to take over the company? If they did, they get 10 voting shares for this stock versus 1 for over here. Now, I'm not suggesting that's happening, but let's take a closer look at where this thing could be going, okay? So let's go look at the web page again. What could the short interest be doing right here? Okay, so here's the Class B short interest. All right, so there's only 400 shares available now. So there was very little to begin with. But look at the fee. The fee's tiny, which is odd. It's odd that you got a short squeeze and the fees are so small. And then if you look at the A shares, there's plenty of stock available, and the fee is actually a little bit higher, but it's still tiny. These are tiny, tiny fees for this, okay? But what we know is there's very little liquidity in those B shares that have 10 times the voting rights. So think about why companies have different classes of shares. So they have A, B, and C. 1 voting share for A, 10 for B, none for C. The C shares are normally given to staff, right? So they're given shares as a part of their bonus, right? But in this case, the people who want to control the stock will own the B shares, right? So that's the way it would normally work. Now, what's interesting is this one media mogul, John Malone, owns 21% of the voting shares, right? And he's bought more of the C shares. So if he bought C shares, we wouldn't think that he's keen in taking over the company, but anything could be happening. If we go to the SEC documents, we can look and see what's happening with the company. Is there anything happening with the B shares? And the only thing that we see is Credit Suisse was in there, which we know. So now the question is, when Credit Suisse, who is the prime broker for the hedge fund that's being liquidated, were they doing B shares or somehow involved? And the answer to that one is right here. And it's no, they were doing the A shares. Okay, so they were doing the A shares stock, Series A. So they weren't touching the Bs. You see that there, right? So doesn't have anything to do with them and their liquidation. And then what we look here is we can say, again, this is Discovery A shares. There was some shares that were being sold, right? A small amount worth about $1 million, still had a lot available. So again, this was in the A shares. So we're not seeing anything in here about the B shares. Now, when we look here, there was a press release that they issued when the stock started moving, and they said they're basically not doing any. There are no insider transactions that would be related to what's happening with the stock. And this is more related to what was happening. This is on March 26th when they issued this. Okay, so they're going to be reporting earnings on May 10th. So that's what we know about this stock. We know that they're not doing anything with their B shares, but it is used normally for people to be able to control what's happening with their stock. All right, so let's go back to what's happening with the charts. So what we can see is this thing is continuing to creep up. And if we step back a second here and go to a 30-minute on both of these, look at what happens with the volume. You can see when the stock was plunging down here from 80 down to 36 on March 26, you can see the volume was relatively light and then picked up on March 26 when the SEC document was issued. And then here, when we look at March 26, on a 30-minute, there's March 21st. You can see there's no volume in here. Right? No volume on March 26. There's nothing happening. So someone's caught. This is a squeeze. And what's more interesting is you can see the C shares are actually dropping. But again, there's no volume there. So you can see there's massive volume today in this illiquid contract. And let's zoom in on this one a little bit closer. Let's go look at this on, say, a 3-year weekly. Yeah, I'm not surprised. You see what's happened here? Once before we had a squeeze up to 100. You see the volume in there? Only 1 million shares, but look at it relative to all the volume from before. This is by far 10 times more volume than we've ever seen in the stock. All right, so we just got to be careful here. Someone's caught. Now, how do you take advantage of this? I would not be trying to guess where the top is on this because we don't know what they're doing. But here's the thing. If you believe that someone's buying this stock, not because they're caught in a short squeeze, but because they want to actually take over the company, then that's different, right? If that happens, keep an eye on the calls and the puts on the A's. If you see the vols really start to take off, if someone's going to try to take over the company, then we should see something interesting happening in these calls. Now, do we see any whales in here? And then do we see big volume further out? Now, here's a big order. Someone's trading a bunch of the 45s out in June. So we can look out to see if we see anything that looks suspicious. And I would say what I see right here, I don't see anything too suspicious in terms of someone like trying to take over the company. And look, if we go to the out of the money calls, we don't really see huge volume in those. So I don't see anything in here that suggests someone's trying to take over the company. But let's see. Of course, you're going to crash on me. There you go. Okay, now it's back up. All right. Let's go in here and see if there's any big trades. We got one big trade at 2,500 contracts at 1 p.m. So just 2 minutes ago, 3 minutes ago, someone just came in and hit the bid on the July 45 calls with an implied vol of 61%. 2,500 contracts. They were in 20 minutes earlier and did another 2,000. So someone's selling those July 45 calls. So when you see that kind of activity, it doesn't suggest this company's about to get bought out. All right, so that's what we see happening there. Any other questions? I just want to keep it brief because I know there are a few questions being raised in the Discord. So anyone who wants to join the Discord, you can find the link down below on this. But that's what was brought up today, and I wanted to cover that real quick. Okay, all right, well, that's good. We'll stop it there.